"Don't open that door!" she screamed. The cowboy found the unthinkable inside. The wind howled across the barren prairie, dragging clouds of dust like torn banners across the moonlit sky. A lonely shack stood against the storm, its wood groaning as if it had a soul of its own. Elias, a weary cowboy with saddle-worn boots and eyes sharpened by years on the trail, pushed the door open just enough to let the firelight spill across the floor. But then he froze. Inside, a woman sat hunched against the wall, her wrists raw from rope, her hair tangled with dirt and blood. Her lips trembled as she looked up at him, eyes wide with terror. Before he could ask a single question, she whispered the words that clawed their way into his bones. "Don't open that door." She didn't shout, didn't beg. She hissed it through clenched teeth, like someone already standing at the edge of death. And then came the sound. From the back of the shack, behind a wooden door barred with rusted nails, something scraped, slow and steady. A drag of nails or boots? Elias's hand hovered over his revolver. "What's in there?" he demanded, her face twisted, equal parts fear and shame. "You don't want to know. For your soul's sake, don't look." The cowboy's throat went dry. He had seen cattle rustlers shot in cold blood, children buried under blankets of snow, and men burned alive for land. But never had he seen a woman's eyes plead like hers. Every ounce of her pain seemed tied to that door. The storm outside battered the shack harder, rattling loose boards until one nearly tore free. Elias stepped forward, his boots creaking. Again, scratch drag. A hollow thud followed, as if something inside had thrown its weight against the barrier. The woman lurched forward, sobbing. "You'll damn us both if you do it," she cried, clutching his leg like a drowning soul reaching for driftwood. Elias swallowed hard, trying to calm the fury of his own heartbeat. The smell of rot seeped faintly from the cracks, mixing with the storm's wet earth. His fingers brushed the butt of his revolver. What was he standing before? A prisoner? A beast? A secret worth killing for? The storm's roar grew louder, lightning tearing across the plains like God himself splitting the sky. Elias knew one thing. Whatever truth waited behind that door, it was about to change his life. And then the wood groaned again. The shack was left behind with the storm, but the echoes of that barred door rode with Elias long after he saddled his horse. The woman, her name barely whispered as Clara, sat slumped in the saddle before him, weak from loss of blood and days without food. He didn't ask again about what lay behind that nailed wood. Not yet. By the time they reached his ranch, dawn spilled soft light across the plains. The world seemed calmer here, the whistle of meadowlarks, the sway of golden grass, the smell of coffee from yesterday's pot still lingering in the cabin. Yet beneath it all lingered a question, gnawing like a hidden wolf. Clara lay on his cot while Elias cleaned her wounds. Her wrists bore rope burns deep enough to bleed again with every twitch. He ground herbs with his calloused hands, whispering the same prayers his mother once used when she tended sick cattle. She flinched at his touch but didn't pull away. "Why tie a woman like that?" he muttered half to himself. Her answer came slow, voice hoarse. "Because I wouldn't do what they asked." He looked up sharply. "And the door?" Her lips pressed tight. She turned her face toward the wall. Elias didn't push. Not tonight. For days, a fragile routine took root. Elias worked the corral, mending fences, checking on his cattle, chopping wood. Clara, though weak, insisted on helping. She carried buckets of water, swept the porch, even stitched a torn shirt of his with fingers still trembling from fever. It was in these small chores, those quiet moments, that something began to shift. At night, she sat near the fire, staring into the flames. He caught her whispering words too low to understand. Sometimes she reached for the locket around her neck, pressing it to her lips as if it held the only part of her soul still safe. Elias pretended to sleep, but he listened. Heard the muffled sobs she tried to swallow. Saw the way she jumped at every creak of the cabin. The door from that shack haunted her dreams. More than once she woke screaming, clutching the blanket like it was a shield. One evening, as dusk bled into night, she whispered into the hush, thinking he'd gone to bed. "If he finds me." "We're both dead." Elias's eyes snapped open, but he stayed silent. The weight of her words sank into him heavier than any storm. Outside, coyotes cried to the moon, and in that eerie music, Elias wondered if he hadn't just invited death itself into his home. The days grew longer, hotter, and crueler. Summer on the plains was a dry fist closing around the land, and Elias felt the same pressure tightening around his chest. Clara tried to live quietly, yet silence had a way of breaking. One morning, while Elias split logs out by the barn, his eyes caught something strange in the dirt. Hoofprints. Not his, not Clara's. Fresh ones. 5, maybe 6 horses, circling the edges of his land like wolves testing the fence. He crouched low, tracing the marks with his fingers. Whoever they were, they hadn't come to trade cattle. That evening, he brought it up by the fire. Someone's been riding close, looking for you, ain't they? Clara stiffened. She set down her needle and thread. You should have left me in that shack. Elias leaned forward, his gaze steady. You think I could have walked away? Not after hearing you beg like that. Her hands shook as she touched the locket at her throat. She didn't open it, but her voice carried the weight of the years locked inside. Behind that door, they left my brother, sick, half dead. They said if I didn't obey, if I didn't deliver what they wanted, they'd keep him chained. They wanted me to steal from the marshal's office, papers, seals, things I couldn't even read. Elias's jaw tightened. So you refused? I ran. She swallowed hard. But my brother, he's still there. And they'll kill him when they realize I'm gone. The scrape he'd heard in that shack. The hollow thud. It hadn't been a beast. It had been her kin. Before Elias could respond, the dogs barked, a low, furious sound. He stood, rifle in hand, and peered through the window. Across the moonlit pasture, dust rose where riders prowled the edges of his land. Shadows on horseback watching, waiting. They've found us, Clara whispered. Elias's chest burned with the truth. By taking her in, he had inherited her fight. The door he had refused to open still loomed between them, but now the riders outside were ready to smash it down. The night dragged on, long and merciless. Elias sat at the table, cleaning his guns, every click and clatter echoing louder than thunder. Clara paced, whispering prayers into her locket. When the hoofbeats finally faded, Elias exhaled. But he knew it wasn't mercy. It was patience. Wolves didn't strike until hunger forced them close. He looked at Clara. If they come again, this ranch won't hold. She met his gaze, eyes blazing through her fear. Then we fight. Out here in the Wild West, every choice cuts deeper than a bullet. If this story has gripped you so far, don't write off just yet. Make sure you subscribe for more tales of love, betrayal, and survival, because the next turn in this journey may change everything. The moon was full the night they came. Elias had been sitting with his rifle across his knees, waiting for the inevitable. Clara slept fitfully on the cot, clutching her locket, whispering fragments of prayers between gasps of restless dreams. Then, hoofbeats, low at first, then thunder rolling closer. He rose, peered out the window. A line of riders crested the ridge, torches in their hands, guns glinting under pale moonlight. Dust plumed behind them like the tail of a comet. Elias's gut clenched. They weren't scouting anymore. They were coming to finish it. He shook Clara awake. It's time. Her eyes went wide when she heard the hoofbeats. She stumbled to the door, but Elias blocked her. Stay low. Let me handle it. Before he could speak again, bullets tore through the walls. Glass shattered. Clara screamed, dropping to the floor as Elias returned fire, each shot ringing like a church bell in the still night. The dogs barked and lunged at the dark, only to be silenced by a rifle crack. Burn him out! A voice roared outside. Elias's blood chilled. Flames licked the edges of the barn first, dry wood catching fast. Smoke rolled across the pasture. The riders howled, circling like devils around a fire. And then it happened. The back wall of the cabin shuddered. That old door, the one Elias had carried from the shack, boarded and barred in the barn to keep it sealed, groaned under unseen weight. Clara's scream cut through the gunfire. No, don't open it. Not now. But the board split, nails tearing free. A figure burst through, staggering into the moonlight. A man, gaunt as death, wrists shredded from rope, eyes hollow with fever and madness. Clara's brother. He stumbled forward, chains dragging, and the riders froze for half a breath, faces pale in the torchlight. Then one spat into the dirt. Kill 'em all, no witnesses. Gunfire erupted. Elias pulled Clara behind the trough, bullets splintering wood around them. Clara's brother, wild-eyed, screamed her name before collapsing into the dirt, coughing blood. She crawled toward him, sobbing, while Elias fired round after round, every shot buying seconds. The night became a storm of smoke, fire, and screams. Shadows leapt in the torchlight as the riders pushed closer. Elias knew they couldn't hold, not against so many. But even as his rifle emptied, his eyes locked on Clara, her arms cradling her dying brother, her lips pressed to his forehead. And Elias knew the truth had splintered open, and it would cost them everything to survive the night. The ranch was smoke and ruin by sunrise. Elias stood in the blackened yard, his shirt torn and his hands still trembling from the night's fight. The barn was gone, nothing left but smoldering beams. His cattle had scattered into the hills. The land he had worked for years, reduced to ash. Clara knelt beside her brother's body, her face streaked with soot and tears. She hadn't spoken since he'd breathed his last, whispering her name with blood on his lips. Elias had dug the grave with blistered hands, setting stones to mark the place. He'd wanted to give the boy dignity, even if the world had stolen everything else. The riders? Gone. A few lay dead in the dirt where Elias's bullets had found them. The rest had fled before dawn, shadows retreating into the hills. But Elias knew they weren't gone forever. Men like that never quit until they'd drained every drop of blood they'd come for. Clara rose slowly, clutching the locket. She looked at Elias, her voice raw. "You should have never opened that door." Elias stared across the smoking field, jaw set. "If I hadn't, he'd have died alone in chains." "Better he died in your arms." Her tears spilled fresh, but she nodded. The truth burned like fire. Every choice had its cost. He had chosen mercy, and mercy had left his land ruined. As the sun climbed higher, Elias turned to Clara. "You can stay, or you can run, but either way, this fight ain't finished." Clara pressed the locket to her chest, gaze steady despite the grief carved across her face. "Then I'll stay. I won't run again." For a long moment, neither spoke. Only the crackle of smoldering wood and the cry of distant crows filled the silence. Elias felt the weight of it, the past they couldn't bury, the enemies still out there, the price of every door opened or shut. He picked up his rifle, slung it across his back. His voice was quiet, steady. "Out here in the West, every choice carries a price. If you've been gripped by this story, don't let go. Ride with us for more tales of love and survival, because the next twist may change everything." The sun broke over the hills, casting long shadows across the charred earth. Clara stood at his side, her locket glinting in the light. And together, with nothing left but ashes, they faced the dawn. If Clara's courage and Elias's mercy stirred something in your soul, don't just leave this story in the dust. Like this video, subscribe and ring that bell, because in the Wild West, love may be scarcer than water. But it always finds a way.